Welcome to In the House, and I'm Mark Shiver, and we are really gaining momentum with this podcast, Zoomcast. I'm not sure what to call it, but I'm so excited today because joining us in the house is Representative Jeff Zenger. And welcome, Representative Zenger.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Oh, I'm really excited to get a chance to talk to you because you represent District 74, Forsyth County. And
Correct.
That's one of our larger counties. And so far, I've been able to talk to some folks from the mountains, some folks from the coast, but haven't really gotten into a representative who is representing one of the larger counties that has Winston-Salem, for example, is a big metropolitan area. So I'm excited to talk to you and get your perspective as a representative from an area like that. But first of all, I wanted to ask you, what is it about being a member of the North Carolina House of Representatives that you enjoy? What drives you to serve the people, to be a representative? Because it takes a lot of time. It's not convenient sometimes. So what is it about this whole thing that you enjoy?
Well, I tell you, life, throughout my life, serving has just been a defining part of it. I have served starting all the way back when I did urban ministry in Baltimore City with teenagers for 13 years. And then I came to Louisville and I served on the planning board, and I was then planning board chair, and I served as an elder in my church, and I've gone on missions trips, and then I served 8 years on the Louisville Town Council. And so service has just been part of the fabric of my life.
Yeah.
So the opportunity came for me to do this, and it just seemed like a natural fit, and it really has been. I love serving. I love trying to have an impact that benefits everybody, and that really can, and also being able to help us lead us or push us in the right direction where we can do the most for folks, and in some places times to stay out of their way is what we need to do. But and so anyway, it's just what I have done my whole life. It's been a perfect fit. I will say it's an awful lot more work and a lot more taxing than I had ever thought, which I'm not complaining. I still love it, but I will say I'm tired. I'm looking forward to going home.
Well, at least on the upside of that whole thing, the long session was a marathon.
Yes.
If what Speaker Moore has been saying rings true, you guys might be out of here in a couple of days. And so I think the end is in sight, and you'll be able to get some good rest. Now, your legislative page says that you're in the building business, general contractor, developer, that sort of thing. Wanted to ask you, in light of all the inflation that we have been seeing in our country and in our state, the cost of development and that sort of thing, building, have you seen in your day-to-day activities in that business, have you seen the effects of this inflation?
Yeah. So one of the problems that we've had is, we've been experiencing in our industry for at least the last 2 years, hyperinflation. I mean, it has been incredible. And the price increases are such that it's impossible. When I built for 25 years. If you're doing a project and something goes up a couple percent or whatever, the customer never knows about it. That's the cost of doing business. But we're seeing price increases that are 18%, 20%,
oh my goodness,
25%. I mean, they're huge. And so you can't eat it. And so I looked over the last 2 years, price increases on a construction project have gone anywhere from 25 to 40% up.
Oh my.
Labor is a real problem. We're at a point. I talked with a business owner yesterday who's in the construction industry, and he's got about 60 employees. And he said, listen, we've maxed out on what we can pay people. We just have maxed out. At this point, we can't go any higher in our prices. And now people are actually starting to back away. So we're starting to see a decline. I've heard of a couple of commercial projects that have been put on hold. And so it's starting, we're starting to see the market slow down. And so that's going to be a big deal. And when you have that, plus I get on my business email, I get notices daily. Oh, we're starting a fuel surcharge for delivery. We're starting, so you got all of that. And so it's everywhere you turn, it's having an impact. And so I don't know. It's an interesting time because so with my business in my industry, it takes a long time for us to wind up. Right. It also takes a long time for us to wind down. And so the way I always gauged the economy was I would watch what architects and engineers were doing. If they're calling me looking for work, oh, we're slowing down. If we have nothing to do but they're busy, I'm 6 to 9 months out from getting busy. So right now, there's projects that are in the pipeline, but the question is how many new ones are coming?
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see a change.
You might think this is kind of silly, Representative Zenger, but I've been meeting every Saturday morning with a group of guys from various churches at IHOP. We meet at 7 o'clock. Been doing this for 15 years. Yeah. Well, there's a quarry right up the road, less than a mile in Nightdale there. And every Saturday morning, I see dump trucks. And I keep telling the guys, when we stop seeing the dump trucks, we'll know things are turning. But you know what? I'm still seeing them. Yep. They're every Saturday morning, they're pulling out of that quarry. And so it might be taking a while to wind down, like you just said. But the reason I asked you about that is because in the press conference that Speaker Moore and Senator Berger had the other day talking about the budget, they mentioned having an inflation fund that could help with just what you're talking about, with a project that may suddenly cost a lot more than it was projected to. To me, that sounds like a good way to do business as you guys are putting this budget together.
Well, it's an interesting time. We have not seen this kind of inflation in over 40 years. And so projects that we approved just a year ago have gone up by more than these municipalities can compensate. So there was a fund set up, and I want to say one of the chambers said 400 million, one of them said 250 million. My comment to one of the appropriations chairs was, well, I'm in the construction business. Do you want to know what my opinion is? And he said, what's that? And I go, it ain't going to be enough.
Wow.
And so, but, the good news is we're on it. We've got our eyes on the ball, and we're going to see through these projects getting funded and finished. Our budget last year in the long session was an extraordinary opportunity because of great management over the last 10 years. Yeah. And so we made a conscious decision. Okay, we're going to go after a bunch of capital projects. Well, we did that, but we're not going to walk away from them now that there's inflation. We're going to see to it that they get done.
You teed me up here. You put the ball on the tee because I was going to ask you a follow-up question about the management of our state's finances. And you mentioned 10 years ago. And I was in another life at that time working in different industry, but I remember going back to 2007, 2008, I was in the radio business, and we followed, I was producing a news show and at a very large station. And so we had to be on all of this stuff. And there was a big recession happening. And at that time, not to try to be political, but the Democrats had the majority in the North Carolina legislature and also in the governor. And we would have these stories every week about different things that were happening and shortages and teachers being furloughed, state employees being laid off. And it was a really challenging time. And so you fast forward to now, and we're looking at, nobody wants to say the R word, recession, but if we do slide into that, it sounds to me as a citizen, and I don't have an axe to grind, but as a citizen watching this play out, it sounds like you guys in the majority are doing a much more thoughtful and prudent job of handling our state's finances.
Absolutely. And I tell you what the difference is, if I could boil it down to one thing. The people that understand the economy the most are the people that are small business people that are running businesses. When any business, what you're doing is you're predicting the future and you're preparing for it. And so if you produce a product, you're placing a bet with however much capital you're putting out that if I produce this product, people are going to buy it, and they're going to buy it at this price, and I'm going to keep my cost at this much. But then you have to shift and watch. I've had to do that my entire career. And so I think the difference is just the people. We've got a lot of people, when I look across our caucus, that are small business people. They've sweated over making a payroll. That downturn in 2008, 2009 was very difficult. I could give you a list of people in my industry that are gone.
Wow.
And we survived, but I've got to tell you what, that rubber band was stretched absolutely as tight as it could go. So with that said, even with the COVID downturn, because we had been putting money away and we've been paying off debt like crazy, we owed like $2 billion to the federal government when the Republicans took over. Because we were paying that stuff down or paying that stuff off and stashing money away, we were in good shape. A recession, there's no way around it. It's going to hurt. But I will say the state, I believe, is in about as good a shape as it could possibly be in to face a recession.
Well, as a citizen, I like hearing that. It gives me great confidence that the people that are making the decisions have their eye on the ball, and there are certain things that you just can't avoid in those types of economic downturns or recessions or whatever. But it's good to know that you guys are not, oh, what do we do? What do we do? You've got a plan. And you mentioned capital projects, and I think you were talking about like on a statewide basis. But I know that in the long session, if we could go back to that for just a moment, there was an opportunity that we haven't had in North Carolina for quite some time to be able to look at smaller towns and infrastructure projects that needed help. And in your district in particular, you had a couple of opportunities to do some really practical, helpful things. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, on a statewide level, yeah, there's big projects that small communities can't handle, like sewer systems and stuff like that. And we were able to really help them along. In my own district, when we just had, I could see everything was coming together. We're going to have a lot of, we had this surplus, and we don't have a bunch of obligations. So we made a conscious decision to go after it. What I looked at was, what can I do that will help our citizens the most? We had some capital projects like the Stevens Center in downtown. We're going to renovate, and we acquired some land for a park where the old Shallow Ford was. But I wanted to do something that was really, really practical. And one of them that I came up with was our fire departments. Our fire departments, particularly where they have a struggle in my area, they're partly volunteer and they're partly not, and they struggle with the budget. And there's a tax on your property tax for the fire department. But what happens is every time they need new equipment, it's really expensive, and they are always trying to just get over that hump.
Right.
And lots of times that can force a tax increase.
Yeah.
So what my thought was, well, golly, what if we could get ahead of this? And so instead of working in arrears, we were working out in front of it. And so I went to my fire chiefs, Clemens, Louisville, and Vienna, and asked them about this, and they gave me some proposals, and we put it in. And so each fire department is getting a brand new fire truck that's paid for.
Wow.
It takes about a year to get them because it's just like a custom built. It's custom from the ground up. There's plans. But the one in Vienna, Chief Lasley, he looked at it and said, well, if we bought these other kind of fire trucks, which I could use, I could also give one to Mount Tabor Fire Department, which is also in my district. So we ended up turning it into 4 fire trucks.
Wow, that's great.
And so the thing is with the fire departments is nobody ever thinks about the fire department until they have to call them, right? And so they're just kind of they're always there to serve. So anyway, I was really proud of that, and I think that's one of those things that the citizens, if their tax rate, is one of the fire chiefs says, this could keep the tax rate for the fire department steady for another 15 years.
My goodness.
He said, I don't know for sure of that, but he said it really can have that kind of impact. So we did that. We got some money for the airport. We've gotten, it was huge. I think it was $307 million that came to Forsyth County and Winston-Salem for everything from affordable housing to the airport to the Winston-Salem State University. I mean, we really went after things, and we did that in every county across the state. And so I'm very proud of that. And here's the best part for every citizen listening, it's all paid for.
That's
we
so
borrow
awesome.
one dime.
That is so awesome. I don't have any personal debt, and
Likewise.
that's a good feeling, isn't it?
Yep.
To know
Yep.
that you're not going to get that payment every month in the mail, and you're able to construct a budget. So when you're able to do that a lot with opportunities like you just described at a state level, man, that's awesome, because normally that doesn't happen. So I have to tip my hat to the way you guys are handling our state's finances. Now, I try to keep this to 20 minutes or so, and so want to get to a hot topic, obviously.
Yep.
Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade.
Yep.
And a lot of people are very excited about that. A lot of people are not so excited about that. But you and I were having a conversation about this, and you had an interesting take. And what are your thoughts about the decision?
So when I read I looked at some of what Justice Alito wrote, and essentially what he talked about in there, and I'm not a lawyer, remember, I'm a builder, but I just try to think practically. He talked about essentially that the government had taken arbitrary power, and they had found a way to try to make something mean something so that they could have the power and control. And he says in there straight, in pretty blunt language, it's time to return this back to where it belongs, to the states. And
Wow.
so, in the Constitution, it says, if it's not specifically laid out in this document, that the power belongs to the states. And so my thought was, and I think this is an uncovered story, is, well, what else? What else then, with that precedent, with that decision, could be sent back to the states? I don't know, but could it be education? Could it be the social services systems? Could it be, who knows? Because here's my thinking on that, and I would be excited about that. But the citizens of Alaska, the citizens of Hawaii, and the citizens of North Carolina have vastly different needs.
Yeah.
Whichever the topic is. Well, the federal government tries to do one size fits all. Well, that's not an efficient or an effective way to administer. And so if we could get it back to the states, and then the states can get it down to the county level, we can be more effective. So anyway, my thought on the Roe v. Wade was, what else? What other arbitrary power that the federal government has taken could get returned to the states? And will it open up a bunch of the floodgates for lawsuits to make that happen?
Well, we know if there's an opportunity to litigate, the legal profession
That's a true story.
They won't let that pass. But that's an interesting take, and I think you're right. I think there are a lot of people who understand that the states should be doing a lot more of this stuff, and we've sort of sat idly by as a citizenry and allowed the federal government over, the last couple of hundred years to take from the states things that should never have been allowed. That's why this Roe versus Wade decision is so alarming to people who are upset about it, because they've just assumed over the years that this was a federal issue, that the Constitution had guaranteed them this. And yet, as you say, Justice Alito said, wait a minute, this was something that should never have been taken away from the states. And so I think your insight is good.
Well, and I think the folks that are really upset ought to take a step back and think about what they're particularly the folks that are protesting. They're essentially protesting against self-government.
Yeah.
And that's that's the foundation of our whole existence in this country. And so, I really hope that that's what happens. I hope it returns power to the states, and the states step up and grab onto it and do what we need to do to take care of our people.
Yeah.
I can take care of my people. I can't take care of the people in Pennsylvania, right? So,
Yeah, I have a hard enough time taking care of myself. Well, golly, I hate this because I could talk to you for another 45 minutes, but I know that you're busy. That we're trying to end up the short session, and we haven't really talked about that. Are you excited about the way the short session is playing out? I know there's some issues that have been controversial. I don't really want to go there, but because stuff might still be on the table. But how do you feel about the way the short session is going?
well, this is the first time, I will say, first of all, the long session was the longest session in the history of North Carolina. And so I think a lot of us would love to see the short session be the shortest in the history of North Carolina. But
Exactly.
I will say this is when we came in that day after the primary election, I showed up at my office at 8 and I was driving down here and I was thinking, I don't have a whole lot on the calendar today. I'll be able to kind of ease on in. I got to tell you what, I walked the door at 8 and by 8:05, my schedule was just boom. And it has been 100 miles an hour ever since. So here at the end, I'm weary. Everybody's weary. We really want to go ahead and get out. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of bills that are jammed up, and it's anybody's guess as to which ones come out. I saw an article the other day that said there were 1,500 bills that are laying idle in this mix, and nobody knows what's going to happen and what's going to come. We heard, I don't know, 20, but we voted on 20 bills, I think, last night. And I expect it to be the same. The big thing there, the only one thing that we want is the budget amendment to get done.
Yeah. So I'll just tell you this, get ready, put a pack of nabs in your coat pocket and get you a soda because it's you might get hungry, in the middle of the night when y'all are still here. But
I'm just going to call Grubhub and I'm going to have them deliver to the Florida house.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, Representative Zenger, we got to do this again. This podcast this Zoomcast, whatever we call it, is just getting started. I think this is episode number 6, and you've been a delight to talk to, and I would love to keep you on a lot longer, but I know that you've got things to do and people to attend to. And I will ask you one last thing, because you brought it up. You said your schedule was wide open. And I know that I work down here. I see the lobbyists and I see people that, parents and groups and school kids and everybody's free to come to the legislature. But you represent the folks of Forsyth County. And do you find that you have opportunities to really help them as their representative, as opposed to, everything's big in the budget, we're doing all this. But when it gets down to it, are you able to help people?
Yeah, absolutely are. I mean, I mentioned, the fire trucks. And so there's some budget things that we've been able to do, but also we get calls here from constituents that need help. And we have all kinds of liaisons into every department. And we've really been able to take care of some big issues for folks. The other thing, and I just want to say this, that I love the most is when people from my district come here and visit me. When I'm down here, it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. Mm-hmm. But it's great because when people come and they actually see what is going on, they're like, oh, that guy really is working down here for us. And so I had a bunch of teachers here this week that was great. I've got a page here right now from my district. I've had business people from my district come here. I mean, I love it when we get those folks. It jams my schedule up, but I don't ever want anybody to think I'm rushed. I'll take whatever time I need to, show them around and let them see how their government actually works. So if anybody from my district sees this and wants to come on. We'd love to have you. Yeah,
that's awesome. Representative Zenger, you have been awesome. Thank you very, very much for being our guest today on In the House.
Absolutely glad to do it anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.